So Games Workshop have shown off an all very Space Hulk new 40k exclusive mini. The big bad 4-12 Necron model seems to have made an unexpected return really quite quickly. Some new combat patrol rules are coming out, there's free striking scorpions on offer, and this could be a month of some big model reveals for 40k. Let's do a big roundup of Games Workshop's news and releases. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're back for another roundup of Games Workshop news and reveals, talking through a whole bunch of things that I found interesting, but maybe not really needing an entire video all to themselves. Jumping straight into it, and earlier in the day Games Workshop revealed a rather nice looking Genestealer model called Biosigns Terminated. This one's going to be one of their exclusive special offer ones that's maybe not all that easy to get hold of versus some of the rest of them, as it's going to be their store anniversary miniature. They usually dedicate a 40k and a Sigmar sculpt to that each year, and we've had a good number of things in the last few, including a new Tower Ethereal, and Cryptek, Space Marine Sergeants, and Leagues of Votann Carls in the past. The idea is that if you have a local Warhammer store, then they have a sort of birthday period where they have a few additional things in offer to drum up some community spirit. Probably the most interesting being to have a bunch of these limited edition models on sale, adding a bit of interest to be able to pick up a model that you couldn't pick up otherwise. The miniature itself is definitely an interesting one though. It's basically one of the new sculpt Genestealer models, having taken down a mighty foe indeed, none other than a Blood Angel's Terminator, going for that iconic pose that they've had in the past where they grasp one of the Terminator's heads and you can see the conduits all trailing down a bit. It's painted in the sort of Genestealer cult pure strain / retro Genestealer style, and most certainly seems to be going for Space Hulk board game vibes here. Very much harking back to the 2009 version of the game with these guys versus the Blood Angels, and in particular that one featured a whole bunch of Genestealers in interesting poses, all a bit different to their classic sculpt that they had at the time. In any case, looks like a fun miniature. I'm sure there'll be a few Tyrannids or Genestealer cult collectors looking forward to picking them up. The Genestealer carapace is done in that bit more of a retro style with the sort of fronded bits directly on top of the carapace. I'm sure some people will enjoy it. I think I'm maybe a bit split on these ones, given that they are really quite interesting little models, but at the same time it's basically something that Games Workshop could sell easily in a box of 10. But given that it's a limited edition miniature, they'll charge character prices for it, so it'll probably be in the region of like £25, $42 or €35 for one Genestealer. It's the sort of thing that maybe tends to appeal to some people a bit more than others. I guess if you wanted to try and make it useful as a character, then perhaps something like the Genestealer cult Sanctus with Biodagger could be a good datasheet to represent it. Or I guess just use it as a squad filler within a bigger squad of Genestealers. Here's a couple more pictures of it. Doesn't look like they've given us any sort of 360 sort of view of the model though, as best I can see. I strongly suspect it's a monopose one, like a lot of these individual sculpts. One of the interesting things that I noticed about this guy though, was that they actually released a little disclaimer with him and basically said that please note that these miniatures may eventually be made available again in the future. They've not generally tended to say that that's the case with limited edition models in the past. I think occasionally they've said the opposite, but the general understanding is they usually tend to be one and done and then never come back. But on the other hand, there are the odd things that have occasionally returned, like say for example that Primaris Champion miniature. I want to say that he was an event exclusive miniature and then came back as a made to order style miniature in the very brief period where he had a standalone datasheet before he was replaced by the company Heroes squad. Just kind of interesting to see that they're covering themselves if they do want to make use of any of these fun sculpts in the future now. Though I have a feeling that some of them are a lot more likely to reappear than others. I feel like they'd be more likely to come back as sort of made to order or limited run type releases as opposed to being added to permanent ranges, and I guess particularly so for a few of the slightly more niche ones around. It definitely makes it interesting to think as to whether or not they might reboot Space Hulk again at some stage. That's been an infrequent staple in Warhammer 40k, going through 3 different editions over the entire span of the game. They had the second edition around about 1996, and then left it off until 2009 to do the more modern version that you can see here. And that one had Blood Angels, Terminators, and Tyrannid Genestealers with a whole bunch of quite fun unique sculpts at the time. I don't know if the store anniversary model is just doing a bit of a homage to that, or whether or not it could actually be a hint towards another reboot of the game. I guess it feels certainly possible for them to do it. It generally seems to be a really quite popular release whenever they do bring it back. It's certainly been a really good long time since they last did one, and in 10th edition we both had standard Terminators and Genestealers both get new miniatures, and as a result I'd be kind of surprised if they didn't release a new version of Space Hulk at some point in the future, maybe more of a question of when than if. No idea if it could be in 2025, certainly could be, though it feels like it could be later as well. In any case, the new Genestealer will be joining the line of previous store anniversary miniatures. I did think that the Invocation of the Elements one was quite a fun one. And out of any of these, I feel like maybe the Erasmus Inquisitor could be a nice one to come back if they decided to resurrect him. It does just seem kind of weird not to have a generic Inquisitor model in Warhammer 40k at the moment, particularly when they've had more recent sculpts both for him and the Warhammer Plus one. Finally, alongside the Genestealer, they've got their other store anniversary things. There's an Age of Sigmar option as well, a Stormcast Assassin called Estena of Brighthall apparently, an Anthology Black Library collection, a couple of pin badges which it sounded like it was up to store discretion to dispense, and then a bunch of purchase reward type things if you spend up to £200 in store, a dice cup, some fancy metal dice, and a double-sided mini gaming board. They said that you need 2 of them to make a combat patrol set though, so it's not exactly the most helpful size in the world. Before we move on to round up a whole bunch of other things for Games Workshop news, teasers, and what's coming next for 40k, I'll just give a quick shout out to the channel giveaway. There's now just over 48 hours or so to enter for the January Krieg box giveaway if you'd like to. This will likely be one of the next ones for 40k, and I'll be giving away 8 copies of this to channel viewers. Feel free to check back at the end of the video if you'd like to hear a bit more details as to how to enter for this one. Next up, it was only a couple of weeks ago that I talked about the mysterious disappearance of the Seraptek heavy construct, the big Necron Forge World thing, and the sole remaining thing in their Imperial armour, given that they've been gradually winding down Forge World things across the various 40k factions and only keeping the really big Titanic scale stuff around. Basically what had happened with this was that it had quietly disappeared from the Games Workshop web store, not just marked temporarily out of stock or things like Forge World kind of often is, and it's often a bit nebulous with Forge World models as when they come and go. There have been things that have just disappeared and then never really come back, some of it for obvious reasons and some less so. But people have been reporting that they've been told by customer service that it had been discontinued with no plans to return. So fortunately that was really quite quickly proved inaccurate. I think it's really quite nice to see the Necron still keep this guy around. He's not exactly the most competitive model in the world. I just quite like the idea of really big, ridiculous scale 40k models being part of the mainstream game if you want to play big game sizes, even if in reality it's kind of a rarity to actually see them on the table. Games Workshop didn't say why they removed it and put it back, though it could just have been for a repackaging, as it now looks like it's being sold alongside its Synaptic Obliterators, where previously it was one model and then it had 2 different weapon options, and the weapon options were sold separately. It seems that the only way to get it now will be with the Synaptic Obliterators, so maybe those Singularity Generators aren't going to be a weapon option for it in the future, I don't know. At the moment I believe that they're no longer on sale, so it could be bad news for them, though to be honest if you've got one of these then I'd just proxy it as whichever version is live in the rules. In any case, nice to see that the datasheet won't be going to Legends and it'll still be a core part of the game. Forge World often does tend to move in mysterious ways. We've still had that Nemesis Warbringer Titan that's been basically removed from a really long time at this point. I believe that was rumoured to have some sort of issues with the mould. That could have been another reason for the Seraptek going away, I suppose. Maybe having a mould issue that they didn't know how long it would take to fix. But it does just seem weird though that if it was just for reboxing, then I don't know why they'd say it was discontinued and not coming back. Maybe just their customer service not being too directly connected to the Forge World team perhaps. Otherwise, for another couple of minor Games Workshop news bits, it looks like there's some new combat patrols coming in the next White Dwarf. It seems that the rules content for White Dwarf often tends to be fun scenarios, Crusade only rules for various different 40k factions, and the odd combat patrol. These combat patrols not representing box sets or anything like that, but just collections that you can build up from one given faction, fitting a certain theme of one sort or another, and then they have another rule set to support it, with their own unique enhancement, objective and stratagems. In this one coming up, there's apparently going to be a Necron Mind Flenser's Murder Court, which sounds like it could be flayed ones. I guess the mind bit could potentially be a Psychomancer perhaps. Sounds kind of fun, though the Necron flayed ones don't exactly have the best reputation as a model kit, putting it lightly. Otherwise there's going to be an Astra Militarum Strike Platoon Gorgon 6, and that's going to be one for the Tempestus Scions. I wonder if that'll just be Scions and Taurox Primes and things, or they'll also have some of those new Aquilons in the mix as well. In any case, it could be fun if you want to try either of those out at the sort of small 500 pointish kind of level. And like the Tyranids Von Ryan Leapers one that they had, these ones will be in addition to the ones in the codexes and not replace them. Guard are also going to be getting a new Combat Patrol rule set coming out with their codex as well. That one's going to be with the 10 Rough Riders, 10 Kazakin and the Cadian Command Squad. And that certainly wasn't the best received Imperial Guard news. Games Workshop was doing really quite a lot of their Warhammer store news all at the same time, as if you have one handy and nearby. There's the option to call in and pick up a free Striking Scorpion from the 11th of January onwards. The idea behind these is that you just turn up and in theory they should just give you one completely free, a random one out of the box. I have heard reports of certain stores being a little bit more or less lenient as to whether or not you can just turn up and take one, though I think it's Games Workshop official policy that you generally can. It could be stock dependent as well, so if you go travelling too far out of your way, it's probably worth checking that there are actually some there at your local store, maybe message ahead or something. But as it goes, it's not the worst idea in the world if you can just call in conveniently. As per the Kill Team box, they're around about £5 or $8 each, so certainly have a little bit of value for something completely free, or could be a fun little painting project. On Sunday night, Games Workshop revealed the rest of their pre-orders as well. I was wondering whether or not we might be lucky enough to get the Deathcore of Krieg box set, though it seems that's going to be a little bit later. I'm hoping for next weekend or the one after perhaps. Instead of that though, we've got a trio of different things: Uruk War Clans for Age of Sigmar, including their battle tome, new bit of scenery, and new Spearhead Force. I guess the Spearhead Force could have some interest to 40k collectors. I feel like you could make some pretty cool Beast Snagger themed things out of a few of those. Otherwise, it's also a Blood Bowl release week, including a whole bunch of miniatures that they've been previewing on Mondays with Forge World star players of one sort or another, including that all rather disturbing Nurgle guy whose big belly is turned into a massive mouth. Finally, there's a bit of a follow-up week for Legions Imperialis Mechanicum stuff. They've basically got the broken down versions that came out in the big box, one for Automata, one for Infantry, and then one for a bunch of those Triaris armoured conveyors. All of those things will be going up for pre-order on Saturday. Aside from the Forge World stuff, most of it should be hitting the discount retailers. Feel free to check out the ones linked in the video description if you want to save a little bit of money, as well as supporting Auspex Tactics. Finally, there was one other little release that might have some interest for some Primarch fans out there. A whole bunch of Primarch art prints at A3 size. I think they said it was an art roundup of the 18 known Primarchs, plus the Emperor and an extra one of Warmaster Horus, I believe. Could be of interest to some of you in any case. Otherwise though, and looking to the future, it could be an interesting month for Warhammer 40k. I'll be interested to see whether or not we get some New Year's teasers. I guess they probably will do some, given that they've done some sort of silhouette spin around ones for each new year for a few now. Last year they showed us off the Orc Big Mech in the sort of mech suit type thing, the Custodes Shield Captain, a Kroot Lone Spear, and the Solar Auxilia. There's a good chance these might drop in the next 24 to 48 hours if they happen. The next big Warhammer 40k release that's been awaited for really quite a long time at this point is the Deathcore of Krieg. This one's certainly pretty hotly anticipated by Guard players out there, and looks like a lot of Krieg players are starting early by picking up copies of the Veteran Guardsman kit. And this one's the one with the Death Riders, Marshal Dreer, the Artillery Piece, the Combat Engineers, and the new Codex and Data Cards. I feel like this one's got to be odds on to be really quite soon, maybe announced next Sunday or the one after perhaps. They've left it kind of a massive time between Warhammer 40k codexes compared with what they usually do after the Blood Angels one and their launch box set, so I think people were generally expecting that this would be got on with fairly promptly in January. Games Workshop hasn't made any guarantees of that sort, of course, though. Otherwise, also in January, there's a good chance we could get some more model reveals at the Las Vegas Open. They generally tend to have a reveal show to tie in with that, and I believe that one's between the 16th to 19th of January this year. Given that we just saw Demon Primarch Fulgrim, it seems very likely that we might get some follow-up reveals of the rest of the Emperor's Children. The other thing that had really quite a good chance to be showing up on Christmas Day would be the launch box set. It seems fairly odds on that they will have one of those coming. Though I guess if they copy the World Eaters one for one, they didn't have one and just had their Combat Patrol. It feels like we've seen all the Krieg, and I guess we've seen most of the Eldari. Otherwise for 40k though, I feel like Imperial Knights could be a good option. And now we've had Brutal and Cunning come out, we could see a few more kill teams too, and that's usually good for at least one interesting updated squad. Otherwise for January, I'm certainly interested to see what's going to be happening when the tournament scene picks up again. We had really quite a lot of changes, including a balanced data slate in December, and not really that much has been done since. We've gone to see some win rates and army successes and failures. Will certain things like the Necron Star Shatter be quite as scary as they're looking on paper? Then otherwise, I'm probably guessing that other codexes and things might be beyond January. We've got the Eldari release wave with all their Aspect Warriors, the Guard full launch of the codex with their command squad, Imperial Knights mentioned after that, and I'd guess Chaos Knights would probably be around the same time, though we haven't had confirmation yet. And of course the big build up to Emperor's Children, which I'd probably guess will be sometime within the next 6 months now, at least judging by what they did in terms of reveals for say the Leagues of Votann. In any case, some pretty exciting times ahead for Warhammer 40k. Finally, I'll just cycle back to do the bit of channel news and talk about the Auspex Tactics giveaway for January, where it's now the last 48 hours or so for the Krieg box giveaway. As mentioned, this will be the chance for 8 winners to get one of those Deathcore Krieg army sets, with the 10 Death Riders, Marshal Dreer, the Combat Engineers, Artillery Piece, and the Codex. As ever with the channel giveaways, there's 2 equal ways to enter, both linked down in the video description. Either you can support the channel on Patreon for any amount, that's the main thing that keeps all the videos coming, and gets you automatic entry into the giveaways each and every month. I do try and keep some interesting stuff of similar sort of scale coming. Or alternatively, you can enter via social media and boost the algorithms completely for free. To do that, do these 3 actions: subscribe to the YouTube channel and like the Facebook page linked below. and then to actually enter the draw, a giveaway post appears on Facebook on the 1st of January from midnight UK time, so it'll be a celebration of the new year this time around. I respond to that giveaway post on Facebook with a picture of a 40k mini or any imagery, along with your name and the date handwritten within the same photo, just to deter those Facebook bots and spammers and make sure the prizes go to real people. Then 24 hours after the post goes live, I do the draw with a random number generator, pick out the 8 winners, and they'll be announced on the YouTube channel update on the 4th of January, and I'll contact the winners. Obviously we don't know exactly when this is going to release yet, though as mentioned my guess is this will be pretty soon. Once the box sets have arrived with me, I'll post them out around the world to whoever the RNG has chosen. In any case, feel free to check out those links down in the video description if you'd like to enter. I'll leave that one there for now though. Look forward to hearing your thoughts on Games Workshop's new Gene Stealer, all the other store and news and White Dwarf stuff, any hopes for the next reveals for Warhammer 40k. Certainly looking forward to whatever the new year might bring. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. And as mentioned, feel free to check out the Patreon page in the video description for entry to the giveaways, as well as a bunch of other stuff like seeing certain videos early from time to time. In any case though, an absolutely massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.